With tuberculosis grabbing global headlines lately in our Living Well segment today, we wanted to get down to basics and answer some common questions about the disease. Pathologist and surgeon Dr. Bill Lloyd is with us from Sacramento, California. Dr. Lloyd, great to see you. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you, Tony. And yes, we're worried about TB, now a global health threat because of all the traveling that's going around.
Yes.
Every year, 1.5 billion people get on an airplane. Is it possible to take TB from one part of the world to another part of the world?
All right, let's start with something very basic. Will you describe for us what is tuberculosis?
Right. Tuberculosis is a germ, a bacteria, a special family called the mycobacteria. Whenever they show the pictures on the screen, you see this little red squiggle with a yellow background. The red squiggle is the mycobacteria. You know, that same family of germ also gives you leprosy, but in this case, we're talking about a respiratory infection most of the time brought into the lungs and stays in the lungs so that when you cough, spit, or spray on other people, you can transfer that germ from human to human.
And that's the way you transmit it, correct?
From human to human, and it usually is through a droplet, aerosolized way.
This is not about me shaking your hand and now I've got tuberculosis, is it?
You got to go out of your way to get tuberculosis. Simple contact won't do it. We're not really sure if an airplane is a serious enough hazard. Yes, it's a closed container, and yes, on an airplane, the air ventilation is only about half as good as a routine office workspace area, but nonetheless, you not only have to be in contact with that person who's breathing on you, but you have to inhale a sufficient number of the organism to actually contract the infection.
All right, talk to us about the different strains, forms of tuberculosis. I've heard there are 3.
Yeah, there's 3 big categories. It's the same bug, but they've got 3 different personalities. The most common kind that we see here in the United States is called drug susceptible. Very common antibiotics can kill the bug and the patient gets better. Next up is multi-drug resistant. That takes a second tier, a more advanced antibiotic, but once again, you identify these patients, you treat them, they get better. The trouble comes with XDR. It sounds like a fancy car model. XDR is the same germ, the same tuberculosis, but it doesn't respond to the first or second tier antibiotics. And unfortunately, for people who are already sick, like people who are immunocompromised, people with AIDS who contract XDR, it can have a fatal outcome in nearly 50% of those infected. So we need to identify people who have contracted XDR tuberculosis, get them the help they need.
At the moment that I have been diagnosed with tuberculosis, am I contagious?
No, the diagnosis may come from a simple skin test, which simply says your immune system has been exposed to tuberculosis. You yourself may not be sick or contagious yet. This requires monitoring. So for all those people that are on that plane earlier this week, they're going to be skin tested now and months from now. They won't be started on antibiotics until they know for sure if these individuals have actually contracted tuberculosis.
Outstanding. Dr. Lloyd, the 101s of tuberculosis for us. Great to see you. Thanks for your time.
We'll talk again soon.